Now, if you're a model airplane person or a motorcyclist, this is a story you might not have heard the story all in one time. You might have heard bits and pieces. I wanted to make a dedicated video of my experience, share it with the world, and I think it's a story that's not been told in full before. It's an interesting story, and it's true, and you can watch it all in 4K. Adjust your settings in the lower right corner. Today, I would like to tell the story of my childhood, how it related to the late Harold Price. He taught me so much about painting while I was young, and I've uncovered a few photos to share of his planes, and one of them, the Crusader, of course. He's not well published or well known like some other flyers, maybe that over the years have gotten more magazine articles or more ink or whatever, but he was an iconic person of the era when I grew up, and everybody respected his building, his flying, and mostly his finishing. And it's that finishing that he was able to impart a lot of to me when I was young. And I tried to draw a little script, a little timeline, so I get most of my dates right and times and places. But when I look at this plane, and this is the last plane I ever built and finished, I see Harold in the finish. I look in, and instead of seeing my face, I see Harold, because I have a feeling if it wasn't for Harold, I would have been a lot less likely to have the career in modeling and in motorcycling that I have. And I look at all of the bikes in my collection, all of the planes I still have up in my Spitfire bedroom, and I think, Harold, you may be gone, but you live within these finishes. So to tell this story, I really have to set the stage. And I know I've told some of this on video in bits and pieces, but I wanted to put it all in one video for my modeling friends, and actually for my motorcycle friends who appreciate the help I've been teaching people how to paint motorcycles and actually painting bikes for people over the years, many years. The story starts, and this is the part that's kind of common, I guess nothing you wouldn't know, but I was kind of a poor kid at around 8 years old. It was 1954. My dad got killed in a plane crash. He was buying a PT-19. Aviation people know what that is. He was a Navy flight instructor in his life. So this was a kind of unexpected thing. And so I had kind of a lonesome childhood. But one of the things that made that part of my life after my dad passed away, it brought me to be positive about everything, is I linked up with several people that flew model planes. One of them was Harold Price. Now, I had built, previous to this, I had built many little half-A planes and the ones you turn the propeller in. I had never seen a big full-size stunt ship. And now I've tried to get the timeline right. I was in this is in the late 59, I try to get this timeline right, because I went to high school from 59 to 63, and it was in the time that I was in high school that right by the high school, down at the bottom of the hill, there'd be a place where people would fly model planes, and one day, Harold Price shows up with this beautiful plane. I had never seen a plane with a finish like that. Wow, it blew me away. He offered, again, I've told this on video, but real quick, he offered to my friend Carl and I both to come up to his house, lived right by the high school, and he said, I'll help you build models and paint, you know. He was very friendly, very friendly. This is the part that matters. He offered to help us. We didn't go to him and say, gee, mister, could you give me a glow plug? He said, hey, do you need a glow plug? So now I picked this up very early in life, that to make good friendships with quality people, it helps if you go to them first and tell them, you think that wouldn't be important? It's important even in motorcycles. That's what helped me meet people like Bob Navola and Big Jim, and among other people, and Luciano, of course. Is I've always been the kind of person, and I learned it from Harold Price, that would just walk up to people and say, hey, how you doing, or this or that, or be very friendly. John DeTavio was that way too. So one of the first things I got from Harold, before we ever even sanded or did it, before I ever even saw his workshop, and he had this enormous, beautiful garage, his job was he made picture frames and religious related things, all of wood. He had a woodworking shop, and that was his business. So wow. And then the other side of the shop was model plane heaven to a young kid, and he would help several people. Carl and I were just two of many. And so we would go up there, and usually what would happen is it would be Friday, we'd get out of school, go to his house, and be there till dark. And then it was a 2-mile walk home, because we didn't drive yet or anything. But we eventually built Noblers. Anybody that's ever built their first Nobler knows. And he supervised. He showed us how to do cap strips and everything. But the thing I got most from it was the finishing. The building I kind of picked up a lot on my own. I had built a lot of ringmaster type of planes. But that first Nobler, when I went to paint it, he took over and he says, no, you got to sand that more. He introduced me to something I still have in my drawer, 400 sandpaper. Sand, use a block when it's a flat surface. He was emphatic about getting everything flat, getting the cap strips to lay nice and straight before you put the tissue on. And he made us use Jap tissue, which when you went to sand it, after it was already had a finish and you'd sand and buff, it was so thin you had to be delicate, but it taught you how to do it. It was a way of teaching you how to do it. And his planes, I know, were all Jap tissue, and they were super, super light, anybody that remembers them. But anyway, that's to open the door to somebody and invite somebody into your world and try to, and I've done it with motorcycles, and I've tried to invite people to my house, help them with their bikes and that, but I got it all from Harold. Now this is the first picture, and this is, because I don't have a lot of pictures. I didn't have a camera back then, and I certainly back in the day took very few pictures. I think my mom took this, but here's one of the little planes I was working on, and you can see there's a K and B, the fuel, and among other things. But this was a big part of my early childhood before I had met Harold. I really wish back then I had more pictures. I don't, but these few that I have are priceless. So during this time that I was Harold's student, he really introduced me to something I didn't even know existed. The mirror meet. I don't know what year it was. He won the mirror meet. We went to the mirror meet in his red station wagon, and Carl and I both were just looking at everything. Carl and I both liked the Navy carrier planes. We spent some time down there. We looked around. The mirror meet was a big giant thing, and Harold had won it. And one of the things, I think there was even money involved, or they gave you a refrigerator or something, or a TV. Andy Lee will remember, Mike Rogers. But I don't all I know is he won that year. We were so happy. I had been introduced to the world of contest model plane flying, because up to that point I had never been to a contest. I never even knew they had a contest. And I got to see some of the other shit, Ronnie Pavlov and Gene Schaefer, and some of the John DeTavio was flying there, and everybody. And I got to see something that to this day, the day I saw this the first time, I couldn't believe it in my eyes, is wind flying, where the engine shuts off and they start doing figure eights with the wind blowing at your back. And I know other people have done it. I have no idea who invented it, but Harold put on a demo with that even to this day I can remember every second of it. But the big thing was I got introduced. This was my introduction to these beautiful planes that every one had a nice finish. Every one was a jewel. And I had to have one, and I was willing to pay the price, and I was pretty honest with Harold. I said, I don't care what it takes. I don't care if I got to rob a store or whatever, rob hubcaps. I wanted to have a beautiful plane that I built and I put the finish on, and he agreed he would help me and teach me all the tricks that he knew. And he knew a lot of tricks from being a woodworker, and that was my maroon Nobler, and I got that. Now this is a funny, ironic thing. You cannot make this up. When I got done painting the plane, it was Aerogloss metallic maroon. And Harold decided, he said, let's make it look like an air racer. And I don't have any pictures of this, but it's in my mind. He decided, and you can't make this up, on the outboard wing, he masked off a number 5. And that has gone on to, of course, and anybody that's a modeler knows, my nickname is Mr. Number 5, so Harold must have been able to see into the future. But these are little stories that you never, if somebody didn't document it, and just like Winpool documented a lot of things, he did the whole event in his book. The things I'm trying to document now are stories you might not have heard, or you might not even know Harold Price. You might never realize the contribution he made, and he made it to me, but I've been fortunate enough to pass it on to a lot of people, and those people have, like Dave Midgley, they have passed it on, and people like that, it just grows exponentially. And they all started with Harold Price. Now, sadly, I don't have a lot of pictures of Harold, but the few that I have, this is my favorite one. I had this hanging in my shop so many years. This, of course, is Harold. The hat, for anybody that knew Harold back in the day, he used to always wear called a pith hat. It's like a jungle gym hat. It was his trademark, and shorts. And he always had a camera with him. Now, maybe that's why I have only a few pictures. He took all the pictures. I don't know. This was his design, the Valkyrie. It had a manta-shaped wing, number one, and a very short tail moment arm, a very long nose moment arm. And I remember him explaining to me all the engineering behind this. And he was one, if you went back to that time, this model was several ounces lighter than anybody else's. And one reason was he knew how to put that finish on and sand every coat of paint and minimize the amount of clear. The amount of clear that was on the top was more than what was on the bottom. He had every trick in the book, and he was able to impart it to me. But I remember this, and so this is the third of the Valkyrie models. The first one was the yellow and blue one. That was the original one. Then the yellow and maroon one, and this was the third one. This one is blue and pink. And this, what's nice about this was a very powdery blue, very unusual color. He mixed the colors himself. I thought that was pretty cool. And these were all Fox 35 models, the normal size model that everybody flew at the time. And he always had one of the nicest finishes on his planes, always. And everybody loved the look of the Valkyrie. Very, very unique and original. What had happened over the winter between the mirror meet, I had spent that whole winter at his shop with my Nobler, and it was metallic maroon, and I remember, oh, to this day, the big number 5 on the wing. I have no pictures, no camera. What a shame. Somebody out there, if anybody ever has a picture of that Nobler, boy, I would pay for that, that's for sure. Anyway, this evolved into what had happened right at the end of the flying season, and this was a sad thing, that we were going to go to, it was the end of the flying season, and Harold said, do you know the Nats, the national championships, are going to be in Willow Grove the next year in the summer? He says, why don't we get you a plane that you can fly at the nationals, and I'll coach you and I'll help you. And he really did show me how to do things that I didn't know how to do. But during that time frame, I had my purple Nobler, and it was not a world-class plane by any means, but I was really proud of it. And what he did, he showed me, look, that dope, the dope had to dry for a month. Now we're going to wet sand it with 400. And at the time we used DuPont rough red compound, and everybody knows how gritty that is. And then when you're all done, you wipe it off, and then you use white compound. And then you wax it with real Simonized, the stuff that it takes a half hour to get off. And I was so proud of that Nobler. Wow, when I went to the Willow Grove Nats, that might have been 61 and 62, because I went to 2 Nats. One is in Willow Grove, the next one is in Chicago. But the first one, and all I was his pit boy. I was just so happy to be there and see Lou McFarland, and see the ballerina, see Bob Gildini, and got to see the Cypress planes with all that beautiful finishing, and oh my God, and Jim Vornholt with the air on. It's all in my mind. It's frozen in there as a kid. But unfortunately, one thing really terrible happened at that Nationals. I crashed. My skill level was not up to par yet. So on the way back from that Nationals, he made a proposition that he had crashed his original Valkyrie, the yellow and blue one, maybe 6 months or a year before that, and it was just sitting in the workshop, and it needed a lot of repairs, needed the nose glued back on, among other things, and a landing gear, a new set of gear and wheel pants. And he says, if you do it, I'll help you, we'll refinish it, and we'll go together to the Chicago Nats the next year. We were planning a year ahead of time, and as a young kid, man, I didn't have any interest in school or anything. I just wanted to go to the Nationals. And over that whole winter, we spent the whole winter in his garage, repaired it, refinished it, re-jap tissued it, put the purple on. I painted it with the color of my maroon Nobler, Aerogloss metallic maroon. Now I have this piece of jewelry, and we go out, we take a couple of test flights, and oh yeah, la 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 la. And he's happy with it. I'm happy with it. Of course, my skill level is nothing like his. We go to the Nats in, I think it's in Chicago, is called Glendale, the Navy base. And we stayed on the Navy base in these places. You didn't have to rent motel rooms or anything, and they even gave you meals, like Navy meals. It was great. But that National, I will never forget. I saw Larry Scarinzi with the Trident, and got to meet people. Billy Werwidge was there. Oh, God, there was just a world of cool people. And I wasn't a really high qualified flyer or anything, but I did get to spend some time at the time with John DeTavio and his protege, Buddy Weeder. And Buddy Weeder had a plane, it looked just like John's. It was beautiful. And I watched him fly, and I was just so inspired by it all. And when I came home from that Nationals, I was committed to model aviation for the rest of my life. And the little short side note, I did not turn 17 yet. I didn't have my permit yet. And I was really should not have been driving. He let me drive, and he never even asked. But that's a story I've told so many times. But I already knew how to drive, and that's another story of it all by itself. But Harold pushed me into that world of competition, because from that point on in my life, I wanted to have the most competitive plane I could build, the best finished plane I could build, and I had to work on my flying skills. There was no doubt about it. That basically all of the juniors from that era, because we flew juniors, they were way ahead of me, and I had to play catch-up football. Now this is a framed picture of, this is Harold's last Valkyrie, the last of the Valkyries, and the one I refinished, and this one, absolutely, I wish I had more pictures. Anybody has pictures they'd like to share, I'll be glad to post them and make a video out of what I know about them, or you write the video. We'd like to share a lot of this stuff that's maybe going to be lost to history. This plane, and that was so much fun flying that plane. I always felt like that plane put me up to the next level, and the next step was I had to design my own plane. And it's this part that I really don't have a lot of pictures of. I have the cover of the, I actually found the cover of the magazine, but I don't have the magazine with the original I-beam sweeper. Now, when I had proposed that, I didn't make a lot of plans, believe me. I just made outlines and sketches and had this thing in my mind how I wanted to do it. And I wanted it to be, in the back of my mind, I had a picture of what I wanted, and I wanted it to look a little bit like an old Jetco Sabre stunt, but be bigger. I wanted it to be big. I didn't know how big. So basically what I did is I took every dimension on a Nobler and made it twice as big. Not realizing that is not the correct way to do it. But I came up with the original I-beam sweeper. Harold was helpful when I did the paint, the taping, and by that point in time, I was relatively competent. He just had to look over my shoulder and go, "That's crooked," or whatever. He always went the extra mile, and that was what was wonderful. But I came up with the original I-beam sweeper. I got to fly it at Union, was the first contest, and I won that contest. And it went on to be the trademark of my whole life. Later on in life, I made other sweepers, the ones that appeared in flying models. And the original sweeper had, of all things, and this is in '65, had a Super Tiger 60, and boy did they go on to dominate the sport for a long time before the modern motors took over. And the plane was a full I-beam construction, and the hardest thing, and I can't really, if I had a picture of this, Bob Hunt would remember. We used to have to roll the windows down in the car to get the plane in the car, and this much of each side stuck out. And I remember Bob always used to tell people that story when we'd go to a contest. But that the original sweeper, anybody has any pictures that, I only have a few. I only have the one, in fact. And boy, some big pictures of that. I know somebody out there has pictures. Anyway, I would like to think of more stories to share. But that is a priceless, to me, a priceless part, because that then opened the door to, and I'll carry this on with another little story that's going to be at the end of this, of how this all evolved into what we have right now. So this is the cover of the magazine in which the construction article appeared. And of course, I was thrilled to death to be on the cover of the magazine, have my article published. And that was the turning point. From that point on, I designed most of the planes that I designed with the help of Big Jim Greenaway. He was instrumental from that point on, and Big Jim was a big fan of Harold Price. And for Harold, while I was doing all these things that I thought was so unique, Harold built the Crusader using a Valkyrie wing. I'm not sure if he used the wing from the yellow and maroon Valkyrie, I'm not sure. But he made retracts, and the way he made the retracts, this plane had a Merco 49 engine. We were all jealous at the time of Lou McFarland with the Shark, and this was kind of his answer to the Shark. And it had retracts. And now, I wish I had the magazine. Boy, again, these are things I wish I had. This was published of how he hooked, I think an 010 or an 020 to the back of the Merco, somehow connected it and made a little air pump that retracted the gear. I'm not sure, he had a little centrifugal weight that turned the gear up and down. It was very complicated, way above my pay grade. But boy, this plane, he never stopped just impressing me with this plane. This was one of his finest accomplishments, maybe the finest accomplishment. Now the story has a very sad ending. I had left model aviation full time and gone road racing for I think about 7 years in Amar, and in the time I was away I had heard that Harold had a terrible motorcycle accident, lost a lot of his teeth and broke his jaw among other things. And because at the time I was road racing, so it was really sad to hear that. But years had gone by, and in 1980 I linked up with Bob Hunt, who was very helpful in helping me build the first sweeper, the second sweeper, the big one, getting it published in a magazine and whatever. And this part of the story you can't make up. I was in the post office. I was the editor of Pampa in the 80s, and I'm going to guess it's about 83, 84. I might be wrong. Yeah, I was already the Pampa editor, and I was mailing the newsletter out, Pro Stunt News. And in the back of the post office, I heard this voice, "Hey, Wendy!" And it was Harold Price. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I was blown away. And I explained to him that I had been away motorcycle racing. He told me about his accident. And he says, "Come over to the house. I want to show you my new design. I'm doing a biplane." And he made this very experimental looking plane. And we went flying 8 or 10 different times where I was just trying to help him trim the plane out. And it was amazing. I didn't have a camera back then. That's the shame of it all. I did not have a real, maybe I had a camera, I didn't take any pictures. But what happened was, we were supposed to go on and it was a weekday, and I remember this, we were supposed to go to the flying field in Teaneck and meet there at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I got down there and I was waiting. It was 10:30, it was 11. Remember, there were no cell phones back then. And it was around 11. I said, I didn't have a stooge. Let me drive up to his house and see. And when I got there, he had already passed away. And he was in a hospital for some surgery, if I remember right, and passed away, leaving Dottie, his wife, and 3 beautiful children. And when we went through what was left of his modeling stuff, I remember this. He had a half-A Valkyrie, and I gave that to Big Jim. I didn't take any of it, and other people people in his family took the models and different things. There was no eBay back then or anything anyway. And basically the stuff was all personal, but a very sad ending to a part of the Harold Price story. But that Harold Price story, I don't think has ever really been told the way it should be. I hope I've been able to do it on this video. So I hope you did enjoy the video and a little history that I know that I'm trying to add out into the database. To me, again, Harold was a very special part of my life, and maybe through the things you've gotten, if you're watching this video, you might have seen 1 or 2 Windy videos, and you might have picked up some information that actually I'm just passing through. Harold imparted it to me. Hopefully I've been able to share it with people on YouTube, and now it's your turn to share it with people that you communicate with. And thanks so much for watching. And I think in a special way, I went on to have a very enjoyable and productive life, that I enjoyed building model airplanes and interacting with the people in the sport, basically my whole adult life. Some of the models I designed and built and painted for other people even. I think they've lived on. And I think the memory of all these times, because somebody back in the day took these pictures, I'm not sure who, because of these pictures, it reminds me of the life that I've had, the life I've been able to share with you in the world of YouTube. And I think YouTube is responsible for letting us enjoy and remember some of the best times of our lives. And I have to personally say, thank you, Harold. And thank you so much for watching.